Hello, hello, dosto. You are listening to another episode of Red, White, and Brown with Tria and Mira from Daisy's Live. And we hope you missed us because we never give you a chance to miss us. You get to see us every single week. So thank you again, as always, for tuning in. And we are excited to give you more Bollywood and Hollywood movies, media, and entertainment. And we're going to start that off this week with Goodbye, which was in theaters. Then we're going to follow it up with the highly anticipated Hassan Minaj's The King's Jester, which if you were on Instagram, pretty much every Indian American celebrity in the US was posting about this whole show, was posting about this whole special. So we hope you got a chance to catch it. We're also going to cover Karam Yudh, which was on Hulu, and we're going to end it off with Majama, which was on Prime. Let's take it away with Goodbye, Em. What did you like about it? What did you not? What was it about?
The Goodbye is another COVID story of loss and grief. But added to Goodbye's COVID story of loss and grief is another, a bigger issue. And the bigger issue is how children grow up and forget their parents. And this entire story of filial piety, expecting children to grow up and take care of their parents and listen to their parents and, give time to the parents, is based on this Asian concept of children are supposed to grow up and take care of their parents. And many movies have done this before. In especially Indian cinema, every year or every 2 years, there's a movie or two that talks about how children grow up and become so engrossed in their own lives that they forget about their parents. So it's a very bhagbhanish situation because it's again, this is a story writer director Vikas Bahl has written and directed it, and it's a story of Harish, played by Amitabh Bachchan, who loses his wife Gayatri, played by Neena Gupta, and his children are very busy in their lives. And while this happened during the pandemic, there are issues with how everybody's handling their grief, but there are also, their lives. They, and how the older person feels as if he's been left out by his own children. Now, handling this would have been, a great concept at the core of it had the stories made sense, had the characters been deep enough for you to really care about those characters, or had the situations that give rise to this angst and this feeling of being left out being credible enough. But all of that did not come out in the movie at all. There's Harish's daughter Tara, who's played by Rashmika Mandanna. Of course, everybody knows Rashmika Mandanna. She's a hot actress. And she's outraged about the fact that she missed the last phone call that her mother made to her. She also doesn't believe in the rituals that her father Harish is carrying out, and she literally puts him down on that. But she's generally angry about everything. She's incensed about every damn thing that's happening around her. Then the eldest son of Harish is a guy called Karan, who's played by Pavel Gulati, and he's just very busy with his work, and his American wife is finding it difficult to settle into the family, and the American wife is Daisy, played by Ellie Abram. And then there's an adopted son called Angad, played by Sahil Mehta, who responds to the stress that his family is giving him by overeating. And then there's this overreaching concept of how adopted children care about their parents more than real children do. So there's so much trope in this entire story that you just can't relate to it anymore, because you might have related to it in the 90s because this was an overarching theme, and stories. Actors like Kader Khan made an entire career out of writing stories about adopted children and how adopted children are better than your own children who don't care about you, how adopted children care for their parents more. But this entire concept of caring for your parents needs a little bit of introspection by our writers and directors, because times have changed. People have lives, women also work, and they also have careers. So the balance between career and family is difficult as it is for people with responsibilities, and then add to it this entire guilt that you're driving into people of, you don't care enough for your parents. care enough for your parents doesn't mean that you got to live with them and you got to, literally take care of them. Care is enough if you feel the love. And why it has to be epitomized by filial piety in the first place, where you got to go and revere, you got to go listen. All those things are things of the past that we didn't have understanding of earlier in our lives, but now we do. Families are different structures now, and bringing in a story which is not with a contemporary structure, and talking about COVID as a timeliner there just didn't make sense at all with the story. So, um, you're telling a story of how elderly people in our society struggle to fit in, but we're talking of times where, elderly people, what do you mean by elderly people? There is no retirement age anymore. The life expectancy is 120 years, and 60 is no longer old, or 70 is no longer old. Amitabh Bachchan himself is turning 80 this year, and he's working 20 hours a day. So you bring in a protagonist like that into picture, who's literally given up on life and who depends on other people for his emotional security, is just not a story we want to listen to.
Of course. And one thing I feel that in general, I had seen, of course, this, if you guys haven't seen, this movie was released in theaters, so you definitely have to go pay to see it. One of the biggest issues that came out of, I guess, like social media reviews from all of you guys that we got a chance to scroll through before we went to go watch it was every single one of you said, with Amitabh Bachchan in this movie, it starts to seem like he's getting typecast, right? Like they realize very much that in the past, he has excelled in movies in this space that stick to tradition, that stick to value, that stick to family life. And because he's 80, they're leaning into it more and more and more. And I think people forget that he's still a very talented and gifted actor who can play age appropriate roles without leaning on his on the tropes of his prime time. Like he can most likely keep up with a good script, even if it's written for this day and age. Because as Em said, how are you going to set a story that's so sexist, that's so generationalist, if that's even a word, that's so that's basically setting generations apart, but you're going to put it in a modern timeline. It's not like, oh yeah, this is a movie that was shot in the 1990s. At least you can make sense of it. You can understand back then people would probably understand this concept. But if you set it in modern day time with the most traditional values, which target audience are you appealing to? And I think we saw a lot of it where people were like, they're just hoping to ride off of the fame of his prime time and keep coming up with movies like that. And I honestly think they're underutilizing such a good talent. And more than anything, you're right. Don't pay to go see this. If it's just a repetition of some of his best work, there's no need for you to pay to see old time patriarchal society values. And on top of it, some of his best works remade for the modern generation that don't even appeal to the modern generation. There's no need for you to pay for that ticket. But
it's not that the values of the modern generation have changed or anything. It's just that lives have changed. The times have changed.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of people getting old has changed. So you can't bring in a tearjerker story which doesn't jerk any tears anymore.
Exactly.
And then depend on Amitabh Bachchan. And, mostly all movies that have starred Amitabh Bachchan in the last couple of years have had this monologue bit. So does this movie. There's this entire monologue of Amitabh Bachchan speaking to his dead wife's ashes, literally. And you're like, okay, this is the moment that we've been waiting for, because this is why he's so good with monologues that every movie that has featured Amitabh Bachchan has this Amitabh Bachchan monologue summarizing, the story or the gist of the plot. But it just doesn't make sense. I think the most loving scenes, there's some flashback scenes between Neena Gupta and Amitabh Bachchan that were good. And then there's this entire scene, this entire back and forth between Bachchan and a very brilliant Sunil Grover, who's a laptop-wielding priest, talking about the deeper meanings of life and death. And I thought those scenes were good. Apart from these two, aspects of the movie, there's nothing to take back home, because what the writer-director is trying to do is he's trying to create a tearjerker, and there's no tears here because you just cannot connect with these people.